Keenen Ivory Wayans was never supposed to become a star, not by the standards of where he came from. Born on June 8, 1958, in the heart of New York City, Keenen grew up in the Fulton housing projects of Manhattan. This wasn't just a poor neighborhood. It was a place where dreams didn't survive long and life tested you every day. He was one of 10 siblings, and their home was often filled with struggle, noise, and the constant pressure of survival. But in that chaos, something unexpected grew: humor. While many would have crumbled under such pressure, Keenen learned to laugh at pain. He found comedy not in comfort, but in hardship. You won't believe how this large, struggling family became Keenen's biggest strength. His parents, Howell and Elvira Wayans, didn't have much to give, but they raised their children with values that money couldn't buy: discipline, unity, and belief. Howell worked as a supermarket manager, while Elvira balanced roles as a homemaker and a social worker. They made sure every child knew the importance of sticking together. In a home with 12 people, there wasn't much space, but there was plenty of love and shared ambition. And this is how Keenen found the drive to chase something bigger than what the streets offered. Even though he had dreams of success, Keenen started off on a very different path. He earned a scholarship and began studying engineering at Tuskegee University. For many in his neighborhood, that would have been enough. Escaping the projects and getting a degree was already a big win. But destiny took an unexpected turn. Deep inside, Keenen didn't see himself behind a desk. He wanted more than a stable job. He wanted to make people laugh, to tell stories, to challenge the world through comedy. So he took a shocking decision. He dropped out of college. He left everything behind to try his luck in stand-up comedy. No backup plan, no promises, just courage. In the beginning, nothing came easy. He started performing at small venues like the Improv in New York and the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. Some nights he didn't even get paid, but Keenen kept going. His comedy was different, sharp, honest, and unafraid to point out the truth. He wrote jokes that came from real pain and real experience. Slowly, people started noticing. He got a few small acting roles, even wrote for Eddie Murphy's stand-up show, Raw. Things were moving, but very slowly. Then came his big break. In 1988, Keenen made a movie that turned heads: I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. It was funny, yes, but it was also bold. He wrote it, directed it, and starred in it. He made fun of the old blaxploitation movies, but at the same time, he exposed how Black culture had been stereotyped in film for decades. This wasn't just a comedy, it was a statement. The film was low budget, but smart, and suddenly, Hollywood had to take him seriously. But here is the shocking part. This was just the beginning of what he had planned. What makes this story different is not just the success, but how Keenen used that success. He didn't want to be the only one winning. He wanted to open the door for others, especially for his siblings and for other Black artists who had been pushed to the background. And soon, he would go on to create one of the most powerful comedy shows in TV history, In Living Color. But that moment of triumph came with a storm of challenges, betrayals, and battles that would change everything. Keenen Ivory Wayans had proven he could make people laugh, but now he wanted to do something that had never been done before. He had seen how television comedy often ignored the voices, faces, and stories of Black people. Most shows back then were created by white producers, starring white actors, written for white audiences. But Keenen knew there was a whole world of talent being overlooked. So he made it his mission to change that. And just like that, In Living Color was born in 1990. But this wasn't just a show. It was a revolution in disguise. From the very first episode, it was clear In Living Color was going to shake things up. The sketches were raw, daring, and unfiltered. They talked about racism, poverty, stereotypes, politics, things that other shows were too scared to touch. But what made it even more powerful was who was performing those sketches. Keenen had brought in his siblings, Damon, Marlon, Sean, and Kim, and gave the spotlight to rising talents like Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, and Jennifer Lopez. This was a show built by a family, powered by diversity, and aimed straight at the heart of American culture. This is where it gets interesting. The show didn't just make people laugh, it made them think. Characters like Homie D. Clown, Fire Marshal Bill, and the Men on Film duo pushed boundaries and challenged the system. Audiences loved it. The ratings soared. Keenen had done the impossible. He created a show that was both wildly entertaining and deeply political, and the industry couldn't ignore him anymore. In Living Color won an Emmy and became a cultural touchstone. For many, it was the first time they saw their own realities represented on TV. It was bold, it was loud, it was different, and that's exactly why it worked. But here is the shocking part. Just when the show was at its peak, the very network that had aired it started working against it. Fox, the channel that broadcasted In Living Color, began to feel uncomfortable with how far Keenen was pushing the envelope. They wanted the show to tone things down, to be safer, more commercial. They didn't like how the sketches tackled real issues. They were worried about losing advertisers. And slowly, they began censoring content, cutting out the most powerful parts. They even started airing reruns without Keenen's permission, just to squeeze more money from the show while diluting its message. This betrayal hit Keenen hard, and Living Color wasn't just a job. It was his vision, his voice, his soul. It was his way of telling the truth through comedy. But the network was turning it into something he didn't recognize. They wanted to take control away from him, to water down his message, to profit off of his creation without respecting his purpose. Keenen tried to fight back. He pushed for creative freedom. He argued with executives. But the more he fought, the more they pushed him out. What makes this story so painful is that Keenen wasn't alone in this fight. His siblings felt the same betrayal. Damon and Kim Wayans also left the show, refusing to stay silent while the network destroyed everything they had built. One by one, the original team walked away, and just like that, In Living Color began to fall apart. Without Keenen's leadership and vision, the show lost its edge. The boldness faded, the laughter became weaker, the spark was gone. The craziest part, Keenen had created a cultural landmark, a platform that gave a voice to the voiceless, but he was pushed out of his own creation. He had poured his life into the show, only to watch it get taken away piece by piece. But instead of letting this break him, Keenen made a bold choice. He walked away, knowing that staying would mean sacrificing everything he believed in. It was one of the hardest decisions of his life, but it was also the most powerful. After walking away from In Living Color, Keenen Ivory Wayans entered a new chapter in his life, one filled with silence, misunderstanding, and twisted rumors. He had just left behind a cultural powerhouse, something most creators only dream of. But instead of being celebrated for standing up for his beliefs, Keenen found himself facing a wave of criticism. Some said he disappeared. Others claimed he couldn't handle the pressure. And soon, online voices began spinning a narrative that didn't match the truth. You won't believe how far some people went to label his career as a failure. Videos started popping up, calling his later years sad or forgotten. Articles suggested he had fallen off, that he was no longer relevant in Hollywood. But here's the craziest part, none of it was true. These sensational stories were built on half-truths and headlines, not facts. They ignored the battles he had faced, the barriers he had broken, and the strength it took to walk away from the very system that tried to control him. What makes this story different is that Keenen didn't disappear. He simply stepped back. He didn't stop creating. He just stopped chasing the spotlight. Right after In Living Color, he directed Scary Movie in 2000, and it became a massive hit, making over $270 million worldwide. He followed it up with Scary Movie 2, and even though critics gave mixed reviews, it was still a success. But instead of riding that wave into more fame, Keenen chose something else: privacy, purpose, and family. He didn't want to be part of a Hollywood that would only accept him on their terms. Let me tell you, this wasn't a man in decline. This was a man in control. Keenen continued producing shows, mentoring his siblings, and working behind the scenes. He helped shape the Wayans Brothers sitcom, and even though it didn't hit the same cultural highs as in Living Color, it showed how deeply involved he remained in the industry. He acted in films, wrote scripts, and stayed busy, but without the need to chase attention. While others were obsessed with headlines, Keenen focused on legacy. But here's the shocking part. Despite all he accomplished, the media rarely gave him the credit he deserved. Instead, they painted a picture of a man who faded rather than one who chose to step back. They forgot the uphill battle he had faced as a Black creator in an industry that often shut the door before he even had a chance to knock. They overlooked how he had opened those same doors for others, how his bold decisions made it possible for shows like Chappelle's Show, Key and Peele, and Wild 'N Out to exist. Keenan's real story wasn't about fading fame. It was about quiet power. He didn't need to be in every tabloid or on every red carpet. His work spoke for itself. His courage to walk away from something broken rather than sell out became part of his legacy. And when others looked for quick fame, Keenen was building something stronger: respect, influence, and truth. Even after stepping away from the spotlight, Keenen Ivory Wayans never stopped being a force in entertainment, just in a different way. While the media fed into narratives of him disappearing, Keenen was busy building something far more meaningful behind the scenes. He stayed deeply connected to his family, mentoring his siblings Damon, Marlon, Sean, and Kim, helping them carve their own paths in Hollywood. What most people didn't realize was that his greatest success might not have been on screen, but in the lives he shaped and the doors he quietly kept open. This is where it gets interesting. While others were chasing the next big role or blockbuster deal, Keenen stayed grounded. He focused on what truly mattered to him: his values, his privacy, and the people he loved. After all the fame, awards, and pressure, he returned to the foundation that had always held him together: his family. Just like they once leaned on each other in the tiny apartment in the Fulton projects, they were still supporting each other now, only this time in boardrooms, production studios, and writers' rooms. He also remained active creatively, just not always where the cameras could see. He continued to write, direct, and produce. He helped his younger family members develop their own shows and movies, and he offered guidance to young Black comedians and filmmakers trying to break into a tough industry. He didn't need applause to know his worth. For Keenen, success was no longer about being seen. It was about making a difference even if the world wasn't watching. Let me tell you, most people in his position would have crumbled under the weight of what he went through: betrayal from a network, criticism from the media, and being pushed to the background of an industry he helped change. But Keenen didn't let any of that define him. He showed the same strength he had back when he was a boy growing up with 9 siblings and not enough food. That same grit stayed with him. It kept him moving forward, even when it felt like the world had moved on. And the truth is, the industry never really left him behind. It just moved in a direction he had already helped shape. Shows like Key and Peele, The Boondocks, Blackish, and even Saturday Night Live began including the kind of sharp cultural commentary Keenen had pioneered. His fingerprints were all over the new wave of comedy, even if his name wasn't always mentioned. So, was his career a sad story, like some YouTubers and gossip blogs try to claim? Absolutely not. Keenen Ivory Wayans didn't fade away. He stepped back on his own terms. He didn't chase clout, he chased meaning. He protected his peace, nurtured his family, and laid the foundation for a whole generation of storytellers. That's not a decline, that's power. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think about Keenen's story? Was he ahead of his time or unfairly pushed out by the system? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love this deep dive into the truth behind the headlines, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone who needs to hear the real story.